What's up, everyone? In this video I want to share with you that's right, 5 little tips. They're not little, they're actually pretty big. 5 tips that you can use to turn your introversion into a strength. Now, fellow introverts out there, you might think that what you have is a problem, but it's not. There's a lot of misconceptions, myths, misbeliefs, techniques, and science that will really help you become even better than you are already. Now, me being a fellow introvert, I'm not as exuberant, confident, or outspoken on topics outside of, the things I talk about in my YouTube video or in real life. So I really started researching this topic. I started diving into books about introversion and being an introvert and the science behind it, and listening to TED Talks, because I thought, I need to be more outgoing. I need to talk to people, because otherwise, no one ever talks to me when I'm in a social setting, and I struggled with this. So I really want to share with you 5 things, and I learned these from this great book. It's called Introversion Power, and this book, it's really interesting. So the first lesson I want to share with you is that you are not as alone as you think. You see, we have this misconception, this false belief that we're a minority, not just a slight minority, but a huge minority. We think that as an introvert, we're 1 in 100 or 1 in 10, and everyone else seems to be having a blast and we're missing out. But when you look at the statistics, it turns out this was the largest study ever done on the largest sample of people out there. They found that 49.3% of people were extroverts and 51.7% of people were introverts. In fact, we consist of the majority. Another study found that there were 46% of people who were extroverts and 54% which were introverts. Now, the variance, the difference it just has to do with how many people they sampled. But you can see that we actually make up a huge portion of the world. And when you look at it that way, you realize that, okay, maybe we aren't that bad off. And that leads us to the second mindset shift or belief that you should understand. This is really important. Second thing to realize is that introversion is not a bad thing. And it is our culture or society that kind of makes it this way. So there's been studies done sampling and analyzing people from European countries versus Asian countries. Now, in Asian countries like Japan, China, Korea, especially Japan, introversion is actually honored. It's flipped. So extroverts are actually people who are, they're not praised as much. So in these Asian countries, being quiet, reserved, makes you seem mysterious, powerful, and wise, whereas being extroverted there makes you seem rash, immature, and so forth. And so they did these studies on these different countries and compared, and what they found was that depending on what culture you're in, you will feel inferior depending on whatever type of personality that culture honors. So if you live in a society that honors extroversion and you're introversion, and you're introvert, you're screwed. But if you live in an introvert society and you're extroverted, you don't feel good as well. You feel like an outcast. And so it's really depending on where you go, which the takeaway is pretty much telling you that it's not your fault. It's just a matter of perspective. And what we can see when we look at it from a global scale is that the perspective varies. So be proud of who you are and what you do. And that also means, as another takeaway, if you can, you might want to move to, maybe if you don't want to move to a different country and learn a new language, maybe move to different cultural areas or societies or groups that honor introversion. That leads us to point number 3. This is an actual actionable technique that you can take. Now, because we live in an extrovert honored world, a lot of the tips and tactics out there that that give you dating advice or give you social skills advice or public speaking advice or networking advice, anything related to introversion, they really push you to get out of your comfort zone. And I mean, if you've ever read any of this advice, you know that 99% of it is focused on the extrovert. And it's so focused to the point where they're telling you if you're not an extrovert, you have to completely change your personality to become an extrovert. I mean, you've probably heard something like this before. Like a common dating advice thing that they tell guys is they'll tell a young guy, oh, if you're really shy and introverted, what you have to do is approach 1,000 women and just get so jaded from the rejections, or just get, they call it desensitized, that it doesn't matter anymore. And then you want to change your personality completely so that you're this over-the-top extroverted person, and you just do that by like constantly pushing your comfort zone. Now, that's not right. That's not the right thing to do. And it's extreme, and it obviously goes against your core character, which is why a lot of girls will lash out against this naturally, because they will say stuff like just be yourself, which is also bad advice because it's on the other extreme. It's telling yourself not to do anything to improve at all. But you know, it's neither one is right. And so rather than doing those extreme things, you can try a different thing, which is simply to rather than go to these extreme extrovert honoring and you know, extrovert honoring social engagements, go to something that plays to your introvert strengths. So rather than going to a loud party, this book actually says, you know, honor the fact that you're an introvert. And so maybe try going to something where you can show off your skills. Maybe volunteer. Maybe go to a dance class. Maybe go to a book club. Maybe go to a public speaking seminar. Kill two birds with one stone. Learn a skill. Maybe it's martial arts or dance or public speaking or productivity, and take a class and teach it. And you're in a more intimate setting where you don't have to like compete and like shout over each other and be someone you're completely not. And it will actually let you show off your strengths. So that's another way of doing it. I don't think there's like one style or one technique that fits everything. There's multiple paths to a goal. So just try that out, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of people who buy into it and fall into this thing, and they end up putting on this complete extreme persona, which is not even themselves. Now, number 4, the fourth thing that you can take from this is realize that a lot of successful people are introverts. There's this false belief out there that if you're an introvert, you can't be a successful entrepreneur, you can't be wealthy, because it just seems like all the really outspoken extroverts, they actually get a lot of more attention. They're always networking. And yes, networking does help, but you can also network or play to your strengths as well with an introverted style. And there's so many, you know, I listen to a ton of podcasts where they interview successful entrepreneurs, and there's so many I could just list off the top of my head of really successful entrepreneurs that are introverts. In fact, a lot of them, if not most of them, are. There's Elon Musk, there's Bill Gates, there's these are lesser known ones, but they're podcasters. Pat Flynn's another one, Amy Porterfield, there's Jeff Walker, Dan Sullivan, Joe Polish, Dean Jackson. And the list goes on. And they're all self-confessed introverts, and they've said so on their podcast. And what you learn here is that you don't necessarily have to be an extrovert to succeed. And that leads us to the fifth and final tip or piece of advice for you, which is that as an introvert, what you can do to succeed is realize that introverts do not correlate to socially inept. You see, a lot of us, because of maybe culture or society, especially Western European cultures, Americans especially, they come to this belief sometimes that if you're an extrovert, you're socially skilled. And if you're an introvert, you're socially unskilled. Now, this book, Introversion Power, brings up a fantastic point, which is to say that she has met a lot of extroverts that are socially unskilled and a lot of introverts that are socially skilled, and vice versa. So both parties have both groups. And how does that work? Well, you just got to really think about it. You probably know some extrovert who is completely rude and disrespectful and too loud and aggressive in a bar setting or party setting, and he's drinking too much and he's being disrespectful. And of course, that's definitely not good in that social setting, whether it's a business or professional setting, because you're disrespecting other people who might write your paycheck or close a deal with you or buy something with you or get you a job. Or even in a casual, personal, social setting, if you're being disrespectful but loud and extroverted, you're still being rude and socially unintelligent. So in the same line, just because you're introverted does not mean that you are socially unskilled. It could mean that you're socially unskilled, and arguably, because you're introverted, you may have a slight disadvantage because extroverts get more practice in, but nonetheless, there's definitely introverts out there who are very socially skilled. They know how to navigate a room. They won't be talking to everyone, but when they're talking to that one person, they know how to keep that person's attention. They know to listen rather than talk too much, so that it draws them in and it shows that you're interested, and then you just become like this charismatic person that really makes it feel like they're the only person in the world that matters. And they're socially skilled and intelligent, and they can navigate social situations, but they're introverted and so on. And of course, you'll get socially unintelligent introverts as well. Those shy, awkward people who really say weird or sexually inappropriate things in social situations, maybe because they don't know any better and they're not calibrated yet. So there's both worlds, and what you learn here is that just because you're an introvert, and I want to hammer this point home, it does not mean that it's the end of the world. Now, I want to conclude with a bonus tip. I learned from this book as well that there's a difference between shyness and introversion. And this was a kind of particular point that I didn't really respect. I thought they were the same thing, but it turns out shyness is like being scared to talk to people because you're scared of being embarrassed or screwing up. Introversion just means that you require time alone to gain energy, and talking a lot to a lot of people drains you. Whereas extroverts, they draw energy from talking to other people. So what does that mean? What's the takeaway? The takeaway is that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you can't be confident and enjoy the situation and really be able to, socially navigate the room. And I misinterpreted that for shyness. I realized that what I really need to focus on is not my introversion, but my shyness. Because what I don't like is going into a social setting and then just, being that wallflower, being scared to talk to people because I'm scared of rejection or failure or being embarrassed. And that's all components of shyness. Not my introversion is not the problem, because if I can eliminate and cure my shyness, I can, have no fear with talking to other people. And that she gives that example in her book. She knows introverts who are not shy at all, who are very confident and can talk to anyone immediately as they enter the room, no matter how intimidating that person is, or that girl is, or whoever it is that's attractive to you. And it's because they're not shy, they're not scared, they're confident, but they're still introverted. So all that means is that occasionally during that party, they will want to go outside to take a break because it's draining to talk to too many people. And sometimes they would rather be at home alone watching Netflix rather than, constantly talking to other people. So when I realized that, I realized, okay, you know what? A lot of people I thought were extroverts, they're actually kind of introverts. I mean, they're confident, they're not shy, but they're very sociable and outgoing, but they have introvert parts of themselves as well. They prefer a certain amount of alone time, just like me. So long story short, there's different elements of introversion and extroversion in all of us. Some of the shyest people I know, people who are even shyer than me, a lot of them are Asian, though some are not. I've seen people of all different ethnicities, black, white, Latino, who are really shy. But the shyest people I've seen, you get them in the right situation, whether alone or where they're comfortable, whether it's with their family or where they don't think anyone will see them, or it's with someone they would trust that they know will not judge them, which sometimes me, sometimes someone else. They are very outspoken and loud, and they have all these opinions and a little talk. So I think there's different elements to all of us, and sometimes it's not the introvert part that's pulling us away, although a lot of people misinterpret that term. It's the shyness. So hopefully this video helped, and of course there's a bunch of other insights I learned from the book Introversion Power, and a couple other books on introverts that I really want to read, especially the book Quiet. That's like the staple book on introverts that I have yet to read. But if you like this video, go ahead and let me know in the comments below, leave a like, and I might share more insights in a future video, or I might just answer your questions in the comments below. And of course, there will be a really in-depth blog article on this coming up on my blog soon. For any introverts out there, which I know there's a lot of introverts out there who will really be interested in this topic and really want to learn more, and maybe this video didn't do it justice. So I'll leave a link in the description for that. If it's not in the description, that means it hasn't come out yet on my blog, which means if you just go to my blog and search, eventually you'll find it when it's actually released. And that, of course, will go into a lot more detail on what I learned from the book. Other than that, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Hit the subscribe button for more, and I'm looking forward to my next video with you guys. Peace.